there, language explorers. Ever find yourself wishing you could just ditch that whole translate in your head thing and like just think in English?
Yeah, you're talking about tapping into that effortless flow that bilinguals seem to have. Like they can switch between languages without even like thinking about it.
Exactly. It's like their brains have this like secret superpower or something.
It's true.
And that's what we're diving into today is like how can understanding the bilingual brain help us unlock a whole new level of fluency, even if we, didn't grow up with two languages.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff. See, for a long time, people actually thought bilingualism might slow down language development in kids.
Really?
But research shows that's not the case at all.
Huh. So instead of like holding them back, it's more like their brains are just doing double the work.
Exactly. Bilingual kids might start speaking a bit later, but their brains are busy building all these incredible neural connections to handle, two languages at once. It's like their brains are doing cross-training, building some serious language muscle.
Okay, that's seriously cool. But how does that help the rest of us, who are kind of stuck with just one language?
Right.
Can we actually rewire our brains to think like a bilingual?
That's the exciting part.
Yeah.
You absolutely can. It all comes down to that unconscious language switch that bilinguals make. It becomes so automatic for them. And the great news is we can train our brains to do something similar.
Oh, wow. So you're saying we can trick our brains into thinking in English, even if it's not our native language?
Yeah.
Sign me up. But how do we actually do that? Where do we even begin?
Well, our source suggests starting small. So instead of translating, entire sentences in your head, begin with single words. See a table. Think. Table. In English. Don't even let your native language enter the picture.
So ditch the dictionary and start labeling everything in sight. I can get behind that.
Yes.
It's like turning my entire house into one giant English vocabulary game.
Exactly. Our source even suggests leaving yourself little notes around the house, labeling everyday objects, mirror, window, plant. It might sound silly, but you're essentially recreating that immersive environment that bilingual children experience naturally.
Okay, I love that idea. It's like giving your brain a constant dose of English, even when you're not actively studying.
Right. And once you've mastered the single word challenge, you can level up to simple sentences. The source gives a great example of looking in the mirror and thinking positive affirmations in English. Things like, I am confident, I am fluent.
Oh, I like that. So not only are you practicing thinking in English, but you're also giving yourself a nice confidence boost in the process.
Yeah.
Two birds, one stone. I love how this approach combines practical exercises with a positive mindset. But let's be honest for a second. We all have those moments when our brains just go blank, even in our native languages. So what happens when we hit a wall trying to think in English? Like, is that normal?
Oh, absolutely. Don't get discouraged. It's all part of the process. Remember, you're essentially rewiring your brain, and that takes, time and practice.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like learning any new skill. There are going to be bumps along the way. Any tips for like navigating those moments when the English well kind of runs dry?
Absolutely. One of the most interesting suggestions from our source is to embrace the power of English-to-English dictionaries.
So instead of like immediately reaching for, that comfort of a bilingual dictionary, I should try to understand the definition in English itself.
You got it. It might seem counterintuitive at first, but sticking with English definitions keeps you immersed in the language, and it helps your brain like forge those all-important connections between words and concepts in English.
That's a really neat trick. It's like resisting that temptation to switch back to your native language and like forcing your brain to work a little harder in English.
And just like any muscle, the more you work your English thinking muscles, the stronger they get.
Okay. It's all starting to make sense. So we've talked about, the power of single words, simple sentences, even positive self-talk in English. But how do we take this like thinking in English thing beyond individual exercises and actually make it a part of our everyday lives?
That's where it gets really exciting.
Yeah.
Our source emphasizes the importance of internalizing the language, making English a part of your inner world, not just something you use externally.
So instead of just speaking English, we need to start thinking in English more organically.
Precisely. Remember those imaginary conversations we talked about? Well, our source suggests, taking it up a notch.
Oh, how so?
Try talking to yourself out loud in English throughout the day.
Out loud, like actually speaking.
Yes. It might sound a little strange at first, but trust me, it's a game changer.
Okay, I'm willing to try anything once, but I'm not going to lie. The idea of Like, narrating my day out loud in English in public is giving me some serious stage fright.
Think of it as dedicated practice time, not a performance. You can even start small, maybe chat with yourself while you're like cooking dinner or, getting ready in the morning.
Okay. I can see how that would be helpful. It's like rehearsing for those real life conversations. But are there other ways to weave this kind of, thinking in English practice into our daily routines without, needing to narrate our entire lives out loud?
Absolutely. Our source had another fantastic tip. Keep a diary or planner in English.
Ooh, I love that idea. I used to keep a journal when I was younger. I can't believe I never thought to write it in English.
It's a fantastic way to, put those English thoughts on paper. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just jot down your to-do list, your thoughts about a book you're reading, or even like a quick summary of your day.
And the best part is like no one else ever has to read it, so you can make all the mistakes you need to without like feeling self-conscious.
Exactly. It's like a private language laboratory where you can experiment and play with the language without any pressure. But what's really powerful about journaling in English is that it forces you to find the words to express yourself, which is exactly what thinking in English is all about.
That's a really good point. It's amazing how all these techniques we've talked about from, you know, labeling objects to self-talk to journaling all tie back to that idea of immersion, surrounding yourself with the language as much as possible, even when you're not actively like studying grammar rules or vocabulary lists.
That's a great observation. We're essentially trying to recreate that natural language acquisition process just, a bit faster.
It's like we're hacking the bilingual brain to unlock fluency, like way faster.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground here from, the science behind bilingualism to practical tips for like integrating English into our everyday lives. But before we wrap things up, there's one more point from our source that I found particularly intriguing, especially like, in our digital age.
Let me guess. Are they talking about texting?
You're good. I don't know how you do that. But texting, like as in like casual conversations with friends, that counts as like thinking in English practice.
Absolutely. It might seem, kind of insignificant, but think about it. When you're texting in English, even those short messages, you're formulating those thoughts and responses in your head before like typing them out. It's like a mini workout for your English brain.
I've never thought about it that way, but it makes total sense. It's all about like building those neural pathways one text at a time.
Exactly. And who knows, you might even like inspire your friends to up their English game too.
Okay, so we've established that, thinking in English is key to unlocking fluency. But for those listening who might be feeling a little, overwhelmed, what's the one thing you would say is the most important takeaway from all of this?
That's easy. It's about making that mental shift from translating everything to directly experiencing the world in English. As much as possible, of course.
So ditching that inner translator once and for all, no more going back and forth between languages. It's about like diving headfirst into the English pool.
Exactly. Embrace those everyday moments, the labeling, the self-talk, even the texting as opportunities to just like flex those English thinking muscles.
I love it. This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I think I speak for everyone listening when I say we've gained a whole new perspective on what it means to truly, think in another language.
And remember, it's a journey, not a race. Be patient with yourself, celebrate the small victories, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So until next time, keep those English thoughts flowing,